That's very surprising. That's insane. I'm shocked to hear that.
New tonight and only on Katu, an 84-year-old man is recovering after police say he and his wife were attacked while walking on a trail in Fairview. According to court documents, the couple was around the Salish Pond Wetland Park when a homeless man pushed the woman down, and police say then tried to drown her husband. Police identified the suspect as Philip Bradley, a homeless man said to be living under the bridge in the park for 2 years. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I'm Deborah Knapp.
And I'm Rick Asway. Bradley is now charged with attempted murder for that attack. K2's Kelly Ozer is live in Fairview tonight. Kelly, a lot of people live in that area.
It's really quite populated because we're standing not even feet from a Target. But if you get into the park itself, there are apartments all along it. So it's very populated, not to mention the people that come here specifically to walk on the trail. We ran into a number of them, and they all say they were shocked to hear this happen. It's a peaceful trail that people in Fairview and Gresham turn to for a walk or a break from a busy life. But recently, the peaceful stream saw a violent turn. According to court documents, an 84-year-old husband and wife were walking along this trail. Court documents go on to say the couple, quote, were walking on the trail when Mr. Bradley approached them and pushed her to the ground. Mr. Smith stepped in to defend her, and that's when things got even more violent. The probable cause document shows Philip Bradley then attacked the 84-year-old man, attempting to drown him in the creek. Neighbors walking the trail were shocked to learn what happened. But Kyle Schwab, walking with his family, says it likely won't deter him.
It seems like that was a pretty extraordinary circumstance. I don't think it's going to impact my walking. I'm really sorry to hear about that. I hope that gentleman's going to be okay.
The 84-year-old man is at home recovering, and Bradley is now being charged with attempted murder. He is in the Multnomah County Jail. So the other shocking part about this, as you can see, is it's relatively well lit. It's also pretty spacious in and of itself. But this also happened on a Sunday evening when the sun was still up, when a lot of people would feel that they were safe.
In the past week, at least 19 people have been injured by gunfire. Police say some people are telling them they're now afraid to leave their homes.
K2's Francis Lynn just arrived at the scene of the latest shooting. It happened around 9 o'clock tonight on Northeast Sumner. Francis?
Yes, that's correct. So that would make this the 5th shooting that we know of since 7 o'clock last night. Right now, there's still some police cars out here. The road is blocked off of Northeast Sumner Street. Police say one man was shot and was transported to the hospital with critical injuries. And police are not looking for any suspects as everyone involved stayed at the scene. Now, there have been many shootings, including one earlier today on Southeast Holt Street. At that scene, witnesses told me they saw one person get taken away by ambulance.
That person, police says, was a teenage boy shot multiple times and had serious injuries, while another man suffered a minor injury. And police say that was the 4th shooting in less than 24 hours. At 7 o'clock last night on Southeast Woodstock, officers found one man shot multiple times with non-life-threatening injuries. I talked to 2 people who say they heard the gunshots in broad daylight.
We heard about 6 to 10 loud noises. We thought that there were gunshots. I just picked up my son and walked the rest of the way home.
And I heard the pop, 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 pop.
Tracy Davis, who didn't want to be on camera, says she helped the man who was shot in a parking lot of a bar.
He got hit in both calves and in his thighs. We got him some juice, kind of patched him up with paper towels before the EMTs got here.
And not 6 hours later, police responded to another shooting on Southeast Powell. Police say during their investigation of that shooting at the hospital with the victims, another 2 shooting victims walked in the same hospital for an unrelated attempted carjacking in Northeast Portland. Witnesses say hearing gunshots is just part of everyday life now.
We can actually hear them from our house. I think that they generally happen around this area.
It has become the norm.
And that's exactly what Lieutenant Shepard with Portland Police says is unfortunately happening after an exceptionally challenging 6 hours.
We have a long history of extremist groups in the state. There is an ideology in Oregon that we are kind of separate from the rest of the country.
When it comes to violent extremism and domestic terrorism, a new report shows Oregon and Washington have some of the most incidents across the country. Oregon ranking 6th, Washington 5th. Good evening. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Steve Dunn.
And I'm Deborah Knapp. What played out in 2020 had a big part in Oregon's status. In that turbulent year alone, Oregon saw 11 domestic violent extremist actions, and 70% of those played out right here in Portland. You can imagine much of it is related to the riots we saw nearly nightly.
K2's Genevieve Rayom live downtown Portland, where we know so many of those protests devolved. Right, Genevieve?
Yeah, Steve, 2020 will no doubt go down as one of the most violent years in Portland history. For more than 100 days, we saw demonstrators and police face off in these streets. You could see smoke and hear fireworks all across the downtown area. Someone even died on these streets. It is definitely alarming, but Oregon has a deep-rooted history of extremism. It's not a ranking Oregonians want. But when you consider the state's history, it makes sense. In a new report from the Secretary of State's office, Oregon ranks 6th when it comes to the number of domestic violent extremism incidents that played out between 2011 and 2020. 22 total events in that decade. Half of those happened in 2020 alone, including the deadly shooting of a Trump supporter in downtown Portland.
He was a freedom-loving American who died expressing his beliefs.
And when Reopen Oregon protesters breached the Capitol building in Salem.
Oregon's risks are not theoretical, they're actually actual risk that we're facing.
The report encourages statewide action to try and crack down on these very real threats that are woven into Oregon's history.
I'm surprised it's not higher on the list, actually.
Randy Blazak is a sociologist and extremism expert. He's very familiar with the state's flaws.
Going all the way back to the 1920s when the Ku Klux Klan ran this state.
Some other examples?
Only about 100 sannyasins are left today.
In the 80s, when members of the Rajneesh movement purposefully gave hundreds of people salmonella in an attempt to suppress voter turnout. And 6 years ago, when far-right extremists took over the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge.